The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Welcome. This is the first official webinar of the Freelance Laboratory, and today we're going to talk about some techniques and tricks that I have for actually 5xing your fees or more overnight. Now, I know that sounds a little hypey, but I'm going to show you how it works and kind of the philosophies behind it. So if you have any questions, this is going to be pretty heavy on strategy, and it's going to be pretty heavy on some mindset shifts. If you have any questions, then I'm more than happy to answer them, but we'll probably go through those at the end. And if you want to type those in either here in the webinar or type them into the group, either way, we'll be able to answer those. But during this time, we'll just kind of work through the content a little bit. I think we had 8 people sign up. Shannon, I see that you're here. Welcome. Thank you for being here live. I'm sure that other people are going to show up here in a couple more minutes. So give them a little bit just to get here and hang out and see what we're doing. So give them a couple more minutes to see if anybody else files in. But if not, we'll just go ahead and start. Shannon, can you go ahead and type a message and let me know if you can hear me, so I know that I'm not just talking to myself. Hopefully I'm not just talking to myself. Oh well. All right. Okay, cool. So let's see. Okay, great. Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate that. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and start the content. Everybody else can trickle in. This is being recorded. However, like I said, I'm not quite sure if it's just going to be put into the group or if it's going to be a paid product later down the line. So this is going to be a really good overview, everything I know about how to increase your fees overnight, and a lot of it has to do with mindset and philosophy and everything that you need to know to do that, because there's a lot of technical stuff that everybody tries to do, like tricks or psychological tricks or anything like that. That stuff just doesn't work, and if it does work, it doesn't work for very long. So what I'm going to be talking about today is much more high level and much more applicable to almost anyone who does some sort of service or freelancing. So let's go ahead and dive right into that and get started. How to 5x your fees overnight. So today we're going to cover a couple different topics. The first one is what I call the slave versus the sage. Next is value versus time, value versus wants, speed, quality, and affordability, and whether or not you can actually pick 2 of them. The concept of not in your village, and they aren't buying whatever it is you think they're buying. They're actually buying you. So all of these things we're going to go through, and I encourage you to take notes and ask questions either here or in the Facebook group, which we will be answering. All right, so let's dive right in. Let's talk about the slave versus the sage. So the reason that I split these 2 things, you'll see in a moment, but let's talk about what they both are. A slave is someone who just does what they're told, is someone who receives an order and completes that order. They don't really have much choice in the matter, and for the most part, they're doing not what even they think might be right. They're instead doing what they're being told to do. And most of them work for nothing or for next to nothing. And this can be construed as someone who's working for food, someone who's working for menial, like wages, minimum wage, things like that, or someone who's working for what they consider to be a comfortable lifestyle, but in reality is just above a sacrificial lifestyle, where if they miss one paycheck or if they miss one client, then they're down in the dumps again. So that's kind of what I refer to as this slave stage. And they're expected to work hard for a very long period of time. That's when you look at someone who is being treated like a slave, they're not being looked at and thanked for their results. They're being looked at as a means to an end, and as someone who's going to work really, really hard for a long period of time for the lowest amount of money possible. It's just not a good position to be in. So what that means for us as freelancers and service providers is that if we are at this slave stage, then we're being measured on our effort and not our results and we're paid on our effort and not our results. And here's what that means. If you enter a client relationship and the first thing they ask you is what is your hourly rate, they are assuming right from the bat, right from the get-go, that you are going to be operating in this slave state. You are charging them for a unit of your time. That means you are being charged, or you are charging them for a unit of your effort. You are charging them for something that you can do in a certain period of time rather than the actual results, or as I'll discuss later, the value of what it is you're producing. And then you're paid on that. And then they judge you on that. One of the biggest things with the slave mentality and the dollars per hour mentality is that they decide that you are worth a certain number of dollars to them. And then if the thing that you're producing isn't worth that many dollars to them, then they stop the project. Or when they basically treat you in a way that is focused on how much they can get out of you for that period of time, rather than focused on the outcome they are trying to create. An example would be if you're a copywriter and you're being charged by the hour, you're being judged on the number of emails you can write in an hour. I mean, people who've been copywriters before have probably heard the phrase, how come it takes you an hour to write an email or 30 minutes to write an email? It can take me 10 minutes. You shouldn't be charging me for an hour to write an email. Those are the conversations you have when the slave mentality is in play, when you're actually interacting with your client from this standpoint, from this area. And it's not the place to be, plain and simple. As a freelancer, especially at what I'll talk about on the next slide, as a freelancer, if you stay in this place, you will fail. You'll either be a slave forever, or you will end up quitting and going back to a job or working for someone else in another type of capacity. This is not sustainable. Being an hour for dollars type person, trading your time and units of effort for money is not sustainable, plain and simple. So here's one of the problems too, that you have no say in the matter. If you rebel, if you say you want to do something differently, if you want to change something, then you will have to speak up and talk to your client about it. But if you're viewed as a slave, they're just going to replace you with someone else. The squeaky wheel they say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, actually it's the squeaky wheel that gets changed. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. And if you see yourself in these types of relationships with clients where they're asking you, how much work did you do today? What is what are you going to bill me for this week? What kind of results are you, what kind of things are you doing? Not necessarily results, but, show me some words on paper, show me some pages, show me some design tweaks, show me some edits, whatever it happens to be, then you know that you're in this type of relationship with your clients. And that means that there's something you have to change very, very rapidly. Indentured servitude is the same way, where you're not necessarily a slave, but you're being paid to do a certain amount of work, and you have no say in the matter. So this is the wrong place to be. Let's talk about the right place to be. Well, actually, let's jump into the real tangibles behind why this mentality is broken and will never, ever be fixed. So the freelancing and service world in general, all across the entire world, the designers, the programmers, the copywriters, the service providers in other ways like house appraisals and things like that, things that human beings do as a service, are slowly being whittled away by several different market trends. The first one is modern technology. Modern technology right now, if you look at the startups that are being funded in Europe and Silicon Valley and here in Boulder, Colorado, over in New York City, over in Australia, anywhere across the world, those startups that are being funded right now are the ones that are taking the jobs away from lower paying jobs and small jobs. They're doing the work that is at the lower end of the spectrum for software, or with software and robotics in some cases, rather than human beings. The reason for that is because human beings at the lower end of the pay spectrum are just not reliable to the extent that these businesses need them to be reliable. It's a self-defeating cycle because they have to work a certain number of hours in order to get paid a certain amount to live a certain lifestyle. The tech and the businesses know that. If they can replace them with a software, they will. Look at the $15 per hour minimum wage argument that's going on here in America. A lot of people are arguing that fast food workers should be paid $15 an hour rather than the minimum wage of $7 or $8, whatever it is now. Now, from a surface perspective of them, those people working at those businesses, they cannot live at $7 or $8 an hour. It's impossible, especially if they have a family. So for them, it makes sense to go up to $15 an hour. But what they don't understand is that the business they're working for, especially if it's at McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever these fast food chains are, these lower tier businesses are, they don't care about the person who's working in that job. What they care about is the unit of output that they need to receive from that person. It's not a personal value. It's simply a numbers game. And so when they see these people who want to be charged double for the exact same, want to be paid double for the exact same amount of work, they start to look at other solutions. And those other solutions right now are coming in terms of robotics that can cook food, automatic kiosks that can take orders, software that can take the place of people who do paperwork, people who do searches, people who do basically all the different things that human beings are now doing, both in freelance work and also lower paying jobs. And all the jobs that you see on Freelance and Odesk and Guru.com and all of those different places, those are the jobs that are specifically being targeted by modern technology, because there's so many of them and they're so low value in the individual unit that businesses are willing to pay for software solutions rather than person solutions. That can be shown in the copywriting world. If you go to the site called scriptdoll.com, it's a product made by Ben Adkins, who's an internet marketer and software creator. That is a software that will write copy for you. You just have to fill out a couple bullets in his software and then hit a button and it spits out the copy on the other end. You have to edit it a little bit and that's it. Boom, you're done. It costs $39 a month for unlimited number of sales letters, of VSLs, of emails, of everything that you can think of that you need for copy, $39 a month. So for copywriters who are charging $1,000, $5,000, $8,000, or even copywriters who are charging low dollars, $100, $200, $300 for their particular service, those lower end people are going to get absolutely destroyed, because the people who they're marketing to can look and see Scriptdoll and say, well, I can pay $40 a month and get all my copy written this way, or I can pay a couple $100 a month for this person to write all my copy. And honestly, I can't trust that person. So that's the biggest problem right now, is with these smaller paying jobs, there's a low level of trust. There's a high level of cost effectiveness research going on. And it's just an unwinnable game, especially for human beings. The software is getting better than us at a lot of stuff. ClickFunnels just came out with almost a identical competitor to Scriptdoll, same thing. And if you've ever looked at it before, there's a company called Persado.com that is creating an artificial intelligence that is capable of analyzing the click-through rates of almost every single ad, web page, sales letter on the internet, and grabbing the persuasive language that comes from it and crafting actual documents, actual sales letters, actual VSLs from that automatically. Now, Persado is enterprise. That means a lot of those companies are going to go up and buy that. But the big deal with it is that a software is churning out what was previously thought to be only human capable copy. And Persado is beating a lot of copywriters. You see the exact same thing in the design world. There's a bunch of websites out there right now that will allow you to click and drag and design your own website, and they are faster and more effective than using Photoshop and InDesign, and I believe it's Dreamweaver. So the idea that a person can go out and earn a couple bucks doing these jobs for business owners is going away, and it's going away very, very rapidly. So the other market trend that is occurring is that there's a flood of lower paid talent. It's coming from all over the world, the Philippines, India, China, Singapore, Eastern Europe, Africa, all over. The reason being, those people are getting access to the internet for extremely cheap rates, and they do not need as much money in order to live that we do as freelancers here in the United States, here in Europe, here in Australia, places like that. They simply can work for less, whereas we can't. It's something that you cannot win. They're willing to work harder, longer, and faster for 1/10 the price, and you cannot win in that fight. So what most people realize here, and this is the thing, this looks really depressing for a lot of freelancers. They're like, shit, how can I fight this? How can I change? Or what do I need to do in order to battle this? Unfortunately, you can't fight these trends. They're not going away. What you have to do is change your mindset. You have to change what you believe you are and what kind of service you provide to your clients in order to understand it. So let's jump into that. I call it becoming the sage. So the sage is a person. The sage is a person with answers and outcomes. And they're not someone that you come to get a small job done. They're someone who you come to solve a problem. They're someone who you come to learn some sort of knowledge that you don't have, or to complete some sort of project that you can't do on your own. That's why people come to them. And they demand respect because of it. Because other people are coming to them with their problems and expecting solutions, then they demand respect. And they can also demand their own price. So the shift here from slave to sage is really a simple shift of what are you delivering? Are you delivering an end result, a website, a piece of copy, a photograph, a web page, a software program, a certain number of hours of work on something, whether it be data entry or, programming of something? What are you offering? Are you offering that end result, that tiny little snippet, or are you offering a valuable project? Are you offering a valuable outcome? That's the shift in mindset. And when you do shift your mindset that way, it opens up a whole other world, because business owners have enormous numbers of problems. They have an infinite number of problems that they always want to solve. But there's a couple ways to get around their walls in helping them solve it. So let's look at a couple of those. First off, the question of value versus time. So let's talk about what happens if you charge $45 an hour. Now, some people might think that that's out of range for a lot of people. Some people might think that's low, whatever it happens to be. Let's look at what happens. If you charge $45 an hour and you can work a maximum of 50 to 60 hours per week, which is a heck of a lot, then you get paid $10,800 a month, which is just under just over 6 figures a year. It's not bad. It's good income. Now, however, you think about the realities of getting 50 to 60 hours of billable work. How much work goes into getting those billable hours? How to find those clients? Can you consistently get 50 to 60 hours per week every week for a year? That's an honest question. Can you find clients who are willing to pay the $45 an hour for a project? Or are you forced to get dozens of clients or hundreds of clients? It's a question you have to answer when you're looking at these hours for dollar trades, because it's really easy to look at the $10,000 a month and go, okay, yeah, I'll just work 50 or 60 hours. But unfortunately, when you are your own marketing department, and when you are your own sales department and your own finance department and your own production department, 50 to 60 hours a week of billable work becomes very easily 100 hours a week or more of work that needs to be done behind the scenes. So realistically speaking, you might be able to get 20 hours of billable work, as the math says right here, fairly consistently. Maybe there's some up or down periods, and you make about 43 grand a month, which is barely enough to sustain a family above the poverty line in most cities. Sometimes it's below in some. So that's the problem with time. If you charge people based on time, or if you charge people based on a project that is supposed to take a certain amount of time, as in, okay, I know that my sales letter is going to take 4 hours to write, and I charge $45 an hour, so I'm going to charge this person 4 times 45. Then that is also trading your time for money. It is not trading it versus the value. You're just simply talking about the project in terms of a transactional, I can work this long and get this project done for you. And then you're also screwed if the project takes you longer than that. So let's talk about value. This is how you calculate value. This is the conversation that you actually have with clients when you are calculating the value of a project. This stands for web design, this stands for programming and everything like that, because most stuff you do for businesses is quantifiable. You can actually sell them on the projected result, obviously never guaranteeing anything because there's a lot of different variables in business. But when you talk about the expected value of the project, then it changes the conversation and it changes the value of the project. So here's how that looks. If you write a sales letter for a client and the client has 200,000 people on their email list and they're selling a $500 project or product, if you get an open rate of 25, you get 50,000 people to open. If you get a click-through rate of 50%, you get 25,000 people to click. And if you get a conversion rate of 2% on the sales letter, which is all very average numbers, you get 500 sales at $500 a piece, which is just under $250,000 in new revenue. So what's your copy worth at that point? I mean, if the sales letter took you 4 hours to write, you would have charged $200 for it if you charge $45 an hour. But what is your copy truly worth? You just made this person $250,000 in revenue, presumably relatively quickly, because they just sent an email out. So is it worth 10% of that? Is it worth 20% of that? The value equation that I'm showing you here is the conversation that needs to happen with your clients. And this might not be as big as it looks right here. You might get a person who only has a 5,000 person email list. You might get a person who doesn't have any emails, but they're projecting a certain amount. And so that's fine. But whatever it is, the value conversation versus the hours conversation is what changes you from a slave to a sage. And that's what we want to get to here. That's how we want to change our mindset. So think about it in terms of the value of the end project and what that end project is going to do for your clients. And you can do that over the long term. If you're creating a website for someone and they're going to be building their entire business off of it, then how valuable is that? That's the question. So every different kind of freelancing, every different kind of service can have this value discussion because you're discussing what the true intrinsic value is for the client. Now, one of the things I teach my mentees and my coaching students is that there are different types of value that you can attach to a project. Now, I didn't write this down in the slide, so this is just for the presentation. But there is external value. That's the money stuff. External value is this equation when you look at it through a lens of average numbers and things like that. Okay, external value equals $250,000 for me, or $25,000 for you, or whatever it is. That's the external value of the transaction. It's not an hours for dollars thing, but it is still a transactional quantitative thing. Now, another form of value, and sometimes this form of value is more valuable, is intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is what the client believes is important and what they want, what they truly want. So if the client externally believes that they're going to make $250,000 from this launch and they're going to get 500 sales from it, then that's an external thing. But intrinsically, if this launch means that they save their business, if this launch means that they finally prove to all their friends that the product works, if this launch turns them into a celebrity or helps them get even bigger with their business or does something to that nature, those are intrinsic pieces of value. And what that does is elevate the value of your service. So those are things that you absolutely must discuss with your client or with your prospect when you're having those sales conversations, when you're finding those new clients. Find out what they're really wanting. If it's money, cool, hammer on the money. Some people are motivated by greed, but a lot of people have other reasons for doing this kind of stuff, have other motivations for wanting to get this business stuff done. And when you hit on that, then you also tie your value into the intrinsic value that you're offering. And that's absolutely huge. So external and intrinsic value both need to be part of the conversation regardless of what kind of service you're offering. So let's talk about value versus wants. So obviously the clients want value. Obviously the clients want something for their money. That's a given. But here's the difference. Most clients, every single client I've ever spoken with actually, thinks they know what they want to achieve that value. They believe they know what the right steps are to achieve that value. And so they come into the conversation with a freelancer or a service provider, and they say, this is what needs to get done in order to reach the outcome I want. This is how many sales emails we need. This is the sales letter we need. I need a VSL. I need a product launch video. I need something. I need this. I need that. They come in with that understanding. Right? Most people have experienced that. Web design, same thing. I need a web design that looks like this. I need parallax design. I don't even know what it means, whatever. So they think they know what they want to achieve the value that they are trying to get from the outcome. However, you as the expert, you as the service provider often know that when the client comes in with a certain expectation in their mind, they're often wrong. Or if they're not wrong per se, they're off in their discussion or their scope isn't large enough or there's something that they're missing. Our job as freelancers and service providers, if we're switching from the slave to the sage mentality, is to show the client exactly what they're missing when it comes to achieving the outcome they want. If you act like a slave, you're going to say, Roger, sir, I am going to write the sales letter exactly the way that you said it. It's going to be 15 pages long. Here you go. I'll have it out in a week. It's going to take me 10 hours. I charge $45 an hour. That is what a slave says when a client comes and says, I need a sales letter. What a sage says is, okay, you need a sales letter. I understand. What are you writing the sales letter for? Well, I'm going to try and sell my product. Okay, what kind of product is it? Well, it's a course. It's a $500 course and it's a membership site. And, we're just trying to sell this to our email list and things like that. And okay. So are you driving them straight to the sales letter or are you sending them somewhere else? Oh, no, they're going to a webinar first and we're going to try to drive them to the webinar first. And then they're off the back of the webinar going to reach the sales page and then they're going to sell it. Like, oh, okay. Well, who's writing the emails to get them to the webinar? Well, we haven't thought of that yet. Who's writing the webinar script? Oh, we haven't thought of that yet. Okay, who's writing the sales letter? Well, that's why I contacted you. Okay, do you have any follow-up for the people who hit the sales letter but didn't buy anything? No, we don't have that. You see where this is going? The sage understands the outcome that the client is trying to achieve, which is obviously more sales for whatever his product is. But instead of letting them command them and say, okay, yes, I will write this sales letter for you, hand me some testimonials and we'll just get this thing done, right? Then the sage is looking at their business holistically, and it forces the business owner to slow down, and it forces the business owner to realize that they might not have all the answers, and they might not have all the information they need to make a good decision. And when you come up with better questions that they're asking, then you are showing them that you're an expert, you're there to be respected, and that you are worth more than a simple slave would be to do the particular thing that they want the slave to do. It changes the game drastically. And this is before you ever talk about value of the project. Value of the project is when you're trying to close a sale. But this is when you're talking to the client about what they really need and what they're missing from what they really need. And whatever your service is, I guarantee your client is going to come to you and say they think they know what they want, but they really don't know the full scope of what they want. So as the expert, like I said, it's your job to show them how to actually get that value. That is your job. That is your duty. And because that is your job and your duty, you are going to get paid more because of it. Because most business owners don't ever hear that from people. They just hear the freelancer say, Roger, and then they run off and do the work. So keep that in mind. It's a mindset shift. Okay. One thing I hear from a lot of freelancers, and I hear this from a lot of office workers too, and I'm in the Army, in the National Guard, and one of the things I hear from a lot of the people who work in the Army is that you can either have it fast, you can have it good, or you can have it cheap, and you have to pick two. You can't pick all three, right? I hear that a lot. It's a nice giggle. You can create a good cartoon out of it and slap it on your cubicle door, but in reality, for a freelancer, for a service provider, you must provide all three. So here's what I mean by that. Speed. You must provide the project and the value as quickly as you possibly can. Here's why. And I say as you possibly can. I don't mean doing something ridiculous and claiming that you can do it faster than you can do it. But as fast as you possibly can, because here's what happens. The client pays you and a clock starts. As soon as the client gives you money, he is counting in his head, subconsciously, in her head, subconsciously, when am I going to get the thing that I paid for? In a transactional world, in a product world, you can go to Target and you can pay for something and boom, you have it now. There's no in between, right? If you pay for something on Amazon, you get two-day shipping, you pay for that, boom, it shows up a few days later. With a freelancer and a business owner, it could be weeks, it could be months before the project is done. So that timer starts, and every single day you lose a little bit of power with that client. Every single day, the amount of time that that person has before they freak out or they ask about stuff or whatever is going down. So speed is absolutely critical. Now keep in mind, speed is how fast you can do it realistically, not how fast you can promise it and then fail. Quality. Quality is something that is expected nowadays. Now, there is a certain amount of leeway, but at the same time, if you are being paid to perform a service, That client wants a quality service, wants a functional service. If the website doesn't work, if the code is spaghetti, if the copy doesn't convert, then not only will they never work with you again as a client, but they will never refer you. And they may actually like besmirch your name. Quality is a absolute for freelancers. You must have a certain level of quality standard to all of your products. You cannot sacrifice the quality. If you're going to, like I said, you can't sacrifice any of these things, but the quality is one of those things that eventually, all things being equal, you will only be known for the quality of your work. So you have to be known for high quality stuff. The better quality stuff you're known for, the more you can charge for. It's that simple. Affordability. Affordability does not mean giving the client a discount. It doesn't mean giving the client what they want or telling them what they want to hear. Affordability simply means that you are targeting the right person for the money that you want to earn from that project. If you're targeting the right person, they're not going to have a problem paying the fee that you demand. If you're targeting the wrong person and talking to the wrong person, then you probably will not be able to get the money that you're demanding. Usually it's on the lower end. So you're trying to target a person who can only afford $500 for a website, but you charge $20,000. You're talking to the wrong people. Affordability doesn't mean that you're going to take the person who has $500 and do a $20,000 website for them for $500. It means that you have to switch your focus to the people who can actually afford the level of skill that you're at and only focus on talking to them. So you must provide all three of these things. Two are not an option: speed, quality, and affordability based on who you're working with. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. If you have questions, go ahead and post it either here or in the comments. So let's talk about a concept that I discussed with my mentees that really kind of brought something up for them. It's the concept of not in your village. Everybody who's listening to this is probably a member of certain communities, whether it's on Facebook, on LinkedIn, in real life, in Twitter, wherever you are part of certain communities. And those communities often know at least a little bit what you do as a service provider and a freelancer. And because of that, they often know what you charge, and they often know the type of work that you do. So if you want to change your psychology, and if you want to change your mentality around what you do and how you do it, then you must leave the communities where you've already cultivated the previous persona. So what I mean by that is if you are currently a slave for whatever you're doing in your freelance career, and you're known as that type of person in those communities, they will not accept your shift. It's just plain and simple. They will not accept your shift to being a sage, to being someone who has the power to discuss big issues, has the power to charge certain prices, all that kind of stuff. They won't do it. The reason being, when someone already has a first impression of you, it's very, very difficult for them to stop that first impression from affecting their decisions. So you have to move communities. You have to move somewhere else, and you have to start positioning yourself as a sage rather than a servant. So that's basically covers the psychology and the new options part. Now, branding and branching out. So here's what you can do. There are some ways to make people believe and help people believe that you are the sage, that you are the person who needs to be respected and get the price that you demand. Some of those ways are education. If you know a lot about your topic, you can reach out to new groups and you can start educating those groups. Gary Vaynerchuk, a social media guy, some of you may or may not have heard of him, has a concept called jab, 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 right hook. That basically means you're giving content, you're giving value, and then once you've done all of that, you can make a soft ask. Once you've done all of that, you can make a hidden ask, whether it's just, hey, reach out to me, PM me, whatever it happens to be in your particular market, whatever. You want to be known as the educator. You want to be known as the resource for information. And you want to be known as the expert. Once you have those three things, and you're in a different village, quote unquote, from where you started, then people will start to perceive you as the sage. And they'll start to perceive you as someone who can help them with problems rather than give them work or give you work that needs to be done. It's a very important shift that all freelancers have to do. And that is how you increase your fees by 5 times overnight, by shifting your mindset from hours for dollars, slave mentality, yes, sir, I'm just going to go do that, to Let's look at this as a problem to solve. Let's look at this as a partnership. Let's look at this as something that is going to give you a ton of value over time and how we can work together to achieve a good outcome for both of us. That's the difference. That's the mental shift. And that is what helps people charge 5, 10, 20 times more than they currently do overnight, is it's simply mindset. So let's talk about the last thing that I want to talk about today, which is the fact that they are buying you. Now, like I talked about with the slave and sage mentality and everything else, value versus time, value versus wants, you have to be the consultant. So the real reason that anybody ever buys a freelancer's work or a freelancer's time or a freelancer's help with a project is for these 4 things: cult of personality, brand, reputation, and uniqueness. A cult of personality is what is happening right now in the world. The trend across the globe has become more social, more connected, more technological, more fast-paced, and more story-driven, which means that a cult of personality, building a following based on who you are as a person, is one of the most important things you can possibly do as a freelancer and a service provider. Being in the public eye is scary for most people. It's actually the top fear here in the US. And people are more afraid of speaking than they are of dying. But the reality is, if you've chosen to be a freelancer, you've chosen to be a service provider, then you have extricated yourself from obscurity and put yourself in a position where you have control over the message that is being sent about you, over the work that is coming to you, and over the lifestyle that you live. That begins with creating a cult of personality around who you are. And so being yourself, but being yourself publicly, is the way to do that. And you will collect followers and you will collect people who want to pay you to perform services for you. I can show you dozens and dozens of examples, and we can talk about this in the group. But at the end of the day, the cult of personality is something that every single freelancer needs to cultivate. The second is brand. All right. Brand is an icky word for me as a direct response copywriter, but I'm realizing more and more that it's important, because branding is the promise that you have to the world. Basically, when someone says your name, what does the world think about you? That's your brand. Now, the cult of personality helps that, but that's the people who are already following you. Your brand is what precedes you. Your brand is basically what other people who are just coming in contact with you hear. So that is important. That's something that you need to cultivate actively. And it's something where you have to think about it. You have to say, okay, what do I want to be known for? What are the services that I provide? What are the price points I want to be known at? How do I want to be known as a person to work with? Like, what do I want people to think about me? That brand is all built into what you need to create as a freelancer, because that's going to attract the right type of prospects that will pay you 5, 10, 20 times more than what you're currently charging. It's that brand. The second part is reputation. Now, whereas brand is the promise that you are portraying into the world, basically what they see first, that's your brand. Your reputation is what happens afterward. Your reputation is what happens when you work with people and what they think of you and the referrals that you get and and the benefits people get from working with you. That's your reputation. Because when someone sees your brand, they think, okay, I see the promises. Now where's the proof? And the proof is your reputation. So you have to cultivate a bulletproof reputation. As a freelancer, and I've done this for the last 4 years, I know that keeping a squeaky clean reputation is very difficult, because there's never any cut and dry situations with bad clients, right? There's never any, this guy was a complete psychopath and I was completely innocent type situations. But the reputation that you have and the reputation that people talk about around you is so important as a freelancer that you have to guard it with your life. And if that means cutting off a client, if that means refunding a client, if that means stopping working with an entire industry, whatever it is, you have to create and cultivate that reputation. The fourth thing, and the most important thing out of this entire presentation, if you only got one thing out of this entire presentation, is that people buy uniqueness. That's it. They buy you because you are unique. You have something unique to offer. As a freelancer and a service provider, if you do not offer something unique, even if it's just your take as a person on things, then you are dead. Because there are a billion people with access to the internet who are coming to take your non-unique commodity job. You must create a form of uniqueness to your work that supersedes everything, where people need sales letters every day, people need websites every day, people need programming every day, but there's only one you. And there's only one you that works in the exact way you do and thinks the exact way you do and actually helps people, certain types of people, in the exact way you do. You are unique and you must show it and cultivate it, because if you are not unique, if you claim to be everything for everyone, if you claim to be able to do everything under the sun, then you lose everything in this world, because freelancers can't afford to not be unique. Their jobs are being taken by a billion people. Their jobs are being taken by software. Simply put, if you are a commodity, you're dead as a freelancer. I can call it within the next 5 years that most freelancers will be out of work because all the jobs will be taken by software, maybe 10 years. So what that means is these 4 things: cult of personality, where you put yourself into the world as a social entity, as an active public figure; brand, which is the promise that you show the world; reputation, which is the proof behind the promise; and uniqueness, which means that you are the person who you are. You are the person you're portraying, and there is no one else like you. Those are the 4 things that create the structure behind switching from a slave to a sage, and by 5xing your fees overnight. So I know that was pretty cerebral. I know that was pretty philosophical. And if you guys have a lot of questions about your specific offering, or if you have questions about your services or problems that you've had in the past, or issues, or like specific tactical questions on how to do this, or where to find groups to talk to, or different ways to spread your message, ask them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them. But hopefully this was beneficial for you. I know that a couple people signed up for it. We've got a couple more people here. Thank you for your time. I absolutely appreciate it. This is being recorded, and I'll basically listen to what everybody else says and listen to my intuition on whether or not I'm going to provide it for free or for a paid situation. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to see if I have a question here real quick. And if I do not, then we will go ahead and end the session. And if you have any questions, please post them in the thread underneath where this webinar registration was. Looks like we're good. No questions. If you have any, right now I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. But if you don't have any other questions, then we can just end this right here. And I appreciate your time. And yeah, okay, great. Thank you all for your time. Have a good day.